This episode was made possible through the generosity of our supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to see videos and hear podcasts before everyone else, become a supporter of Liz Zorab on Patreon to support our work here at Byther Farm.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Byther Farm Gardening Podcast. I'm Liz Zorab and today I am very, very excited. I'm very pleased to have Leigh Johnstone, the Beardy Gardener, with us. Hi, Leigh.
Yeah. Hello, Liz. Thrilled to be here.
I'm really pleased you're here. So we haven't chatted very much before. So for anybody who's listening in on our conversation, do you want to explain a little bit about where you are and what you do?
Well, so I'm Leigh. I live down in Southampton. Day job wise, I still run a theatre company, so that's my day job. So I run an arts and health charity. But since sort of the pandemic, as many of us actually, there's a sort of little group of us that have grown up through social media from the pandemic and have become gardeners. And it's a bit of I'm in that moment of career change, actually, going from the arts world into the gardening world. And actually, there are many similarities. So I am still forging my path through that, doing some fantastic stuff along the way, meeting some wonderful people. And yeah, I suppose my mission statement would be that I talk about how gardening can improve and support mental health and well-being, and that comes from a place of lived experience, really.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my that's what I do. That's what I exist to do. That's what I want to do. I want to encourage as many people as possible to get gardening, to start gardening, to get their hands in the soil, just to have that connection really with nature. Because, and again, it comes from a place of my own experience, especially through the pandemic, where it was, for so many of us, helping us to sort of survive in that traumatic moment we had. And then all of my past trauma, depending how dark you want to go, Liz, my childhood traumas and things, which we can get into later if you want to, but sort of came back through the pandemic, and it was my garden. Luckily enough, we just moved into our first house, me and my wife, and we had a garden. Mm-hmm. And it was the garden that allowed me to start the deal with what was happening really with my mental health.
Yeah, I think the pandemic highlighted for so many of us how important that connection with outside, with nature, with sunshine, with fresh air, with space, with plants is. And, you know, Mr. J and I were in an incredibly fortunate situation. We had a good old chunk of land that we called home, and I was out in the garden going, this is even better than usual because it's so quiet. But I was always conscious that, you know, how it would be such a different story if I was on the 5th, 6th, 15th floor of a block of flats with 3 small children at home.
Yeah.
It would have been so difficult.
Totally. And I think for me what it did was it you know, I connected to, you know, dawn and dusk a bit more. That sort of cycle of a day was actually, because you were just stuck in one place, and you sort of got to understand. You've got to understand the season. You got to, you know, you really take notice of the season you're in. But absolutely, I mean, I used to go. I mean, that's what partly encouraged my giving garden project a couple of years ago, was that on my sort of daily walk during the pandemic, I live in the centre of Southampton, so there's a lot of high-rise tower blocks near me, and I was just sort of thinking about the people that maybe don't have access to space like I do, or even a balcony, and how that feels, and how we can expand green spaces for those people to help, you know, to sort of improve their connection with nature and the outdoors, and what I could be doing with my garden, because I was a lucky one, had a space, how I could use that to help other people. So, and that's where actually the Giving Garden project of mine came from.
Fantastic. And what a great garden.
I was just growing plants in my own garden to start with for other people who maybe didn't have a garden. So I was, you know, it was a WhatsApp group. It was a online on Instagram, and I was taking people through a growing cycle. But then obviously last year I got the opportunity to do a representation of the Giving Garden at Hampton Court, which was a wonderful invitation. So I said, of course, yes, of course I'd like to do this for the RHS. Why not? Yeah, that project is really that for me is what gardening's all about. It's about that first connection. You know, I don't claim to be a specialist in any particular field of plants, or you know, for me it's just about that first touch, that first connection, because I understand how it helps me. So if I can amplify that for others, then, you know, job done.
Absolutely. So you are on Instagram as the Beardy Gardener.
Yeah.
And in one of your introductory videos on Instagram, you say, and you dance.
Yes. Well, so you could dance is a very loose term. I move a bit. I mean, being, you know, so I did a drama degree. That's what I did my degree in, and obviously set up a theatre company when I was in my second year. So performing and performance has always been a part of who I am. And actually, in my childhood, was doing for me what gardening does now to support my mental health. So I was on stage. I was doing after school drama clubs. I was able to be someone else and express myself through performance. So obviously the pandemic hits and I start an Instagram account, and I was just dancing in the garden, you know, moving my body, shimmering, doing some silly things, because, you know, that comes naturally to me, making myself look like a bit of a prat maybe at times.
We all do that one way or another.
Making people laugh, and that for me was really warming and got me through a lot of the pandemic, was because people were sort of enjoying what I was making. I was doing a little boogie, and that's sort of been, I suppose people knew me for being that guy that danced around in his garden. Don't do as much of it now as I'd like to. I need to maybe learn a new routine.
Bring it back. Bring it back.
Bring it back. So, and I did a bit of dancing on Gardener's World as well. I don't know if you saw my episode, but they said when they were filming, just do a bit of the dancing. We probably won't put it in because the BBC don't, you know, it's not something that we're used to. But they kept it in. So if you want to see a little bit, then do check that out. But yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm not a professional dancer. It's probably no style. I mean, improvisation is more probably the term.
Yeah, the closest I'm going to get is something like, you know, you remember as kids we did musical movement.
Musical movement.
That's what we did in primary school. They didn't call it dance; it was musical movement. It was like one step before you got to actually dancing, and that's about my level of dancing.
Yeah. It's just music's on, just move. Doesn't matter if it's in rhythm. Just move.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's how I would define my own style.
You were saying about, you know, you're not a specialist in any particular type of plants or types of plants or anything, but do you have plants that you particularly look forward to seeing each year?
I mean, I'm a sucker for a hardy geranium just because, well, I like the colour. I like the deep colour of the green and the purple. And actually, I created a colour, my very own paint colour, which was a lovely, wonderful invitation I had last year, based on a geranium leaf. So that and my bathroom's painted in it. So it holds a particular place in my heart, geranium. But I love an allium. I love verbena. I like a purple. Purple is a feature of a lot of my sort of planting plans and styles. I like a green and a purple together, bit of white in there. And for me, that's me sorted. So, I mean, but then again, I like veg. I like growing a lot of veg, tomatoes, a lot of herbs. You know, I've got a young daughter. We're sowing herbs together. So for me, it's stuff that I can use, I can eat, I can smell. I grow a lot for the senses because that's part of the mental health connection. A lot of grasses. I've got quite a lot of miscanthus in my garden, which I just like seeing in the breeze, and I like the height of it. So there are a few things, but then every year is different. I always get excited about new things. So, it's not like I've got a. It's like when someone asks me, "What's your favourite film?" Well, it'll change every 6 months. What's your favourite
Yeah.
food? Well, I haven't got one really. I like all food, so
Oh,
it's
yeah.
hard.
So like what people always say to me, what's your favorite veg? And it's like whatever's about to come in season.
Yeah,
It's whatever I
exactly.
haven't eaten for the last 10 months,
Yeah.
and therefore I'm really looking forward to see it. So that is
I mean,
literally a movable feast.
I had a gooseberry bush. It's gone now, but and it's very small. But I love gooseberries. I absolutely love gooseberries. They're because I like that sort of sour bitterness. I love.
Hmm.
I used to have those sweets as a kid. Those like really sour sweets,
Yeah.
and it's sort of my. But I love growing gooseberries, and I can grow them quite easily. And my nan used to grow them, so they are actually. If I was going to pick a fruit, that and rhubarb for me. But I've never grown rhubarb actually. But that would be cool. But yeah, it's just. Yeah, I do like a lot of I do like I just like greenery,
Mm.
actually. Got a lot of ivy, got a lot of ivy growing up the side of I've got a Virginia creeper, which we shouldn't have put in, growing up my wall, but I've got a
Okay,
big
so when
garage
you
wall.
say you shouldn't have put it in, why
It's
shouldn't
just
you have
going
put it in?
everywhere. It's just going everywhere. It's just creeping across the whole garden. And actually, I wanted it obviously for mass coverage quickly for the garage
Hmm.
wall. That is quite a dominant feature of my garden. But it just takes a lot of maintaining when you think you've clipped it back. Actually, it's just gone over the whole garden. It's in all your raised beds and everywhere else. But does look beautiful and has done the job. So I'm 80% in favour of it.
Yeah.
It's just when you find it everywhere in the guttering. I can see it now, and I need to trim it back from the guttering.
I remember how my parents planted one on our back wall when I
Mm.
was very young. And the thing that I remember most about is those sticky feet
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
stick
yeah,
to the walls, and they
yeah.
remind me of, so they're like tropical frogs that
Oh,
stick on
yeah,
things, aren't
yeah.
they?
Yes, that's quite a good. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And
And I
actually,
really like the frogs, so it was like I like the plants.
there's something quite interesting in watching how the plant does that. Actually, and even ivy, where it sends out I don't know what the specific name is for what it sends out.
Yeah.
But how plants cling and adapt and grow up things. I think this is quite nice to watch, actually.
It's
Actually,
incredible when you think about the just even the slightest of breeze, it's going to be moving that constantly against
Yep.
the wall. How it actually gets a chance to
Yeah, I
get a
know.
grip and stay there is quite incredible.
That's nature, isn't it? That's what for me. That's what helps me in my well-being journey. Is that sort of the awe-inspiring awesomeness of nature and
Absolutely.
resilience. Actually, resilience
Yeah.
is a key word for me when we talk about gardening, but also my mental health. And it's actually seeing the resilience of the natural world really does connect with me and puts things into a bigger perspective for me, which is very, really important to my mental health. So yeah, things like that, all things like that, things that you think you've killed off that come back
Yeah.
again. Wonderful moment when you see something come back. I mean,
Mm.
there's not a feeling like it,
Yeah, and the great bit is you think you've killed it off, but nature's
really.
brought it back. It's that
Yeah, I
whole
know.
you
It's
didn't even have
wonderful.
anything to do with bringing it back, and it's that
Nope.
yes. And
I
actually,
know.
very often we have nothing to do with bringing it back, but we'll still claim the credit for it.
Oh, totally.
I
Totally.
constantly talk
Because we're
about
experts. Yeah.
I constantly talk about being happy to take credit for nature's capacity to to survive
Yeah.
despite my interference with it. But I'll
Well, yeah,
still say, I did that. I brought it back. Well, no, I didn't.
no one's going to challenge you, so you might as well just, the plant can't say, no, you didn't.
So
I mean,
in my year ahead, Lee, I'm going to tell you about this because it might be something for
Yep.
you to have a bit of a think about too.
Okay.
In my year ahead, I am concentrating on sounds in the garden. So I am growing plants specifically, not just for their colour and their textures and all that, but for what they sound like. So I'm choosing plants, things like sweet corn. I'm actually going to be planting almost just as an ornamental. I'm still going to harvest from it, but the
Okay.
sound of the wind going through sweet corn leaves is just fantastic. And when I started looking at, noticing more carefully, noticing the sounds of plants a couple of years ago, I thought, right, I'm going to get myself ready and I'm going to do a year of planting for the sound and see what impact that has.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I love the sound of that. I mean, again, and that's back to my trying to hit all the senses with what I do, how I garden. I mean, the easy, for me, it's about tall grasses because you can, it's if you're sitting there, they're at eye height, you can hear the wind through them, and I mean, actually, bamboo's quite interesting. Not that you necessarily want to put a load of bamboo in, but bamboo's nice for the wind.
Yes.
What else have you got then? What other things are you thinking?
I've got quite a big garden, so I have got quite a lot of bamboo. So the area that I'm cultivating is about 1.2 acres.
Oh, jealous.
Well, don't be. It can be quite hard work, and it can be when stuff goes wrong, it goes wrong on a really big scale. So, unlike last year when there was so much rain and so many slugs, and you start thinking, how many slugs can you keep on an area that size? It's quite a lot, actually.
I can imagine.
So I'm doing quite a lot of plants that I'm allowing to spill onto pathways so that we walk on them. So lots of time on the ground.
Yeah.
And letting that go over because that's got quite a nice, particularly at this time of year, it was quite crunchy underfoot yesterday. I could hear it, with the very dried stems, winter stems. So that was quite crunchy. So I'm doing quite a lot of big leaves, things with big leaves, to kind of let that sound happen as a kind of juxtaposition to the sound of grasses and bamboos.
Yeah. Oh, nice. That's
because I think the tones will be different. The sound, literally the notes, I think, will be different of the wind going through them.
Yeah. But also, like you said, but actually walking on them, through them, putting your hand on them. That's obviously, that because I'm just thinking the wind, but actually there are other levels in which you can hear how a plant sounds, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah, stepping on it, picking it.
When you just brush
rattling
past stuff, you get that kind of whoosh noise, or you get a very soft wiping noise. So lots of kind of experimenting with those this year.
I love that. Are you going to record any and try and record any sounds?
Well, yes. Literally record them. They will all be on videos. But a conscious listen to this.
Oh, I love that.
On videos. And when I've got enough of them, I'll do something fancy, like, I don't know, create a course about sounds.
Ooh. I work with because we do a lot of with my theatre company of outdoor installations, and we go to a lot of festivals, and there's a guy, Jason, you may know him, does a hidden music of trees. He's an artist. He records, don't ask me specifically how he does it, but he records, like, he goes around and puts something to a tree and records the sort of frequencies of the sound that trees make, and then creates a whole soundscape around it, and then creates a piece of artwork where you go up and you stand next to the tree and it plays its signature sound. It's really interesting. And I know people do that with fungi as well, sort of recording.
I was looking something this morning where someone had put a sensor into, and it was it was like a small house plant or something, and you could hear it singing, for want of a better phrase.
I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that's just something that's like, whoa! I just think, how amazing. I mean, there they are speaking to us. See, the plant will then go, actually, Liz, you didn't contribute to me coming back. It will then tell you, because you'll be able to hear it.
Yeah, I don't know how much I want them to give the secrets away.
Yeah, there you go, you see. So just think about it. Oh, dear.
Yes, sensory gardens, I think, are hugely underestimated. And in some ways, they don't need to be a specific conscious, this is a sensory garden. We can just build so many of those elements into our, between the front door and the garden gate.
Yeah.
There are so many things we can just have underfoot that create different sounds in terms of your concrete path or a gravel path, or but all those things that we used to notice as a teenager trying to sneak in really late at
Yeah,
night. And so
yeah.
we know which step is the
Mm.
creaky step and all.
I mean,
And
I
then,
mean, I do that now, Liz, with my 2-year-old daughter. I've got a specific floorboard on the landing I can't stand on because she'll wake up. Yeah.
but we're very attuned to those. And then suddenly we walk out into our garden and we kind of forget all of those things of,
Mm.
there are all those lovely things around us that we can use.
And I think that again is what I try and do is I try and it's just about not necessarily about always engaging and doing in the garden, but just being present.
Mm,
Because a lot of what I do professionally is around the 5 steps to well-being, or the 5 ways to well-being, as people call it, which is the sort of it's 5 things that, I mean, the NHS adopted it, and it was created by a economics foundation or something like that. But it's the 5 things that we all need to sort of thrive as a human being. One of which,
mm,
is giving to others, it's connecting with others, it's learning something new, it's being active. So it's all of that. And I think, and one of them is just paying attention to the present moment, which a lot of people call mindfulness. That's a
yeah,
term in and out of fashion at the moment.
yeah,
But just by standing and being, and a lot of the stuff I do and I did during the pandemic was trying to tell people that you don't have to always be gardening, whatever you think that means. If that's a job or a task, you can still be a gardener and just be watching and
yeah,
looking and being present. A lot of gardening is watching. Observation is a key
yeah,
skill for a gardener. And
yeah.
actually, it's really important to identify that sort of just you being present in the space, which is quite hard to do in our busy lives. Just be still.
Yeah.
Um, Even for 5 minutes, though, makes an amazing difference. And I think going stripping it all back and going back to that basic is fundamental. I think to try and get more and more people engaged in the natural world and what gardening can do. So yeah, so I do talk a lot about taking notice, as I call it, of
Yes,
what's around us. And
absolutely.
and
And it's number one
the
thing I
space
talk
is
about.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us do these days. I think it's quite it's something that's becoming a bit more known. Is
Mm.
just being present rather than the 100 jobs you might have to do. Actually, it's okay not to do that today.
So
You
one
can
of the
just sit in your
things
border.
that I started trying to campaign on a very, very low level about a
Mm.
couple of years ago was not to talk about uh, gardening in terms of jobs and work, and to actually change
Yeah.
the language that we use. So we don't have, and I'm really sorry, Gardeners World, but we don't have jobs for the weekend. We just have
Yeah.
things to do, things to explore this weekend, because there's a different mindset about this is a job, this is a task, this is something I've got to do, as opposed to this is an experience I can have. This is a
Yeah.
bit of nature I can go and touch, and if we take it away from being a job and make it something we want to do, wow.
And I think in all the work I do with different groups, I think that is a fundamental barrier actually as to why people don't engage in gardening in the first place, because people see it as it's a task. I have to understand the right conditions and the Latin names of stuff. And obviously, knowing Latin names serves a purpose, but actually, for the stuff I do and that sort of real sort of first touch accessibility stuff, it's not about that. It's just about, like you just said, having an experience with
Mm,
nature and plants. And I think for a lot of people, they think, well, I have to know a certain amount of things. I have to know the different types of soil, and yes, in time potentially, but you don't. But that doesn't need to. I think that's the barrier for a lot of people, both young people and adults, who I try and engage in gardening. It's a job I need to do a little bit of learning around, and that then stops people from engaging any further.
yeah, yeah, it's hard
But
work, right? And it's
yeah, it's
not,
no, not at all, not
I
at all.
haven't I
Try
haven't
trial and error.
yet seen a Rose sitting in the garden with a book trying to learn all the stuff. They just
No, no, I know,
they just do
I
it.
know.
Don't they? They just do the
Yeah,
thing. So
exactly. And it is trial and error, but it's understanding that that's an enjoyable process as well,
yeah,
and that as gardeners, things won't come back that year, or they won't necessarily go as we thought they would. I don't like to say failure, because I don't like the word failure. because everything's a learning process. But it's taking joy from that, and that is hard. That is hard to do. Trying to change your mindset and not sort of get beaten down by what you might think are failures and flipping them around a bit. But yeah, that's getting a bit more philosophical, maybe.
I'm up for a bit of philosophical thinking. There's the thing around about gardening that I think is so nice is you can literally just walk outside and flick some seed heads or flick a packet of seeds around and see what happens. Or you can dig deep, not literally, but you can dig deep into your imagination and into the library and into research and get stuck in at a whole different academic level.
Yeah.
Or you can get stuck in at a practical level. Or you can just go, actually, I'm quite happy just to scatter a few seeds around and wait and see.
Yeah.
And I like that there is the room for every style of gardener there.
Yeah, totally. And actually what I like banging on about as well is the fact that I've said it a lot in interviews, is that my garden at any one time is a reflection of my mental state. So, at the moment, I don't do well in winter. I'm not out there every weekend. I'm just not. And actually the garden is a reflection of, how much time I've given it, but also what it's giving me and how much I'm engaging with it. And it'll always be evolving. It'll never be a finished garden, whatever that is. Yeah. And I think people are hung up on that as well. The fact that there needs to be this finished product or this.
What you're going to do? What do you do when a garden is finished? Because to me, you go and start a new garden.
Yeah, and I'm always changing. There's always, I mean, you probably like this as well. Just you do something and you're like, that's actually not. I need to change that again next year or whatever. And there's always something that just needs tweaking or changing or developing or So again, it's that evolving. And also gardening, you are forced to slow down, which is something that I struggle with. You've got to wait. It's not instant gratification unless you've got thousands of pounds to spend on plants and architects and landscape designers, but it's a waiting game and you're not going to get instant results. And I think that's also something that's very powerful.
I think so. I think for us all learning to accept the seasonality of our lives. You were saying earlier on about during lockdown, you suddenly learnt the rhythm of the day and that you had the dawn and dusk thing. And I like you, I have difficulties in winter. I have low level depression all the time, and then I get clobbered by SAD by about mid-November, and I sort of say, middle of November, that's pajama o'clock for me, and I start getting out of bed again around this time of year. And I really do have kind of 2 months of complete downtime where I just work with the seasons. I get up when it gets light and I start going to, I don't actually go to bed as it starts getting dark, but I'll put my pajamas on and I'll go, I've had enough for today by 3:30 in the afternoon. But I have learnt that I have to, if I just live with that and I work with it and go through it, I come out the other side of it.
So again, that's something that I've learned as well. It takes time. And it's not easy for everyone, but I talk about it as well a lot, is the fact that accepting you are like that. That's part of who you are. That's not it's nothing to be frowned upon. It's how your life works and how you react to life, and just go with it and roll with it and understand. And then you start to understand how you start to deal with it, and that gets better every time it happens. But it's just there will be days where you don't want to face going outside, but that is okay. I think that's the biggest thing. That is okay. That's you. That's who you are, and you don't need to change that.
No, and actually, your friends and your family would accept that quite quickly from you when you actually say, "This is how I feel."
Exactly.
And I'll feel okay in another day or two. And I don't need lots of tea and sympathy. Just today, I'm not doing it. And that's been a good one to learn, and it's also allowed me to kind of think about what plants do and how actually that behavior of shutting down for a couple of months before you then start building up is exactly what plants do.
Totally building the energy for the next season, hibernating, if you will. It's that, I tend to eat a lot in the winter because it's that bulking that energy for the winter months. That comes from our ancestral DNA, isn't it? It's that sort of winter's coming, we're out in the cold, we're living in a cave, We have to take on bulk. We have to eat more because we need to keep our energy across the winter. And it's that again, isn't it? It's going back to that comfort in that sort of something bigger, that world that's out there, nature that we're all connected to. Again, that gives me some sort of nice comfort. There's comfort in that for me.
There is.
It's like when I look at a flame. There's something that does something to me. I was looking at a candle yesterday. I'm mesmerised with it for 10 minutes because it was that flickering, and that goes back to our to ancestors.
Absolutely.
And sort of safety with fire, and that sort of So it's all of that.
What a nice conversation. This has been
nice,
lovely.
isn't it?
This has been really nice. So I am going to move on because we've only got about 5 minutes left. Leigh, where are people going to be able to find you in the coming months or so? So they can find you on Instagram. They can find you on your website.
Beardygardener.com. Yep. I'm creating a showcase garden at Gardeners World Spring Fair at Bewley.
Mm-hmm.
That's sponsored by New Forest National Park. So it's based on the idea of how our national parks can help us support our mental health. Again, all of what we just talked about. So I'll be doing that. That's beginning of May. And then I am hosting the tips and tricks stage at RHS Malvern, which is the week after BBC Gardens World. So that'll be fun. And then who knows what the rest of the year holds, but I'm doing a few other projects around for people as well. So I'm around.
That's good. That's good. Leigh, thank you so much for joining in the conversation today. Can I ask you to come back again later in the year and let's have a look at how the season's been?
Delighted to. That'd be great.
That would be brilliant. Excellent. Leigh, thank you very much.
The podcast you've been listening to is a By the Farm production. All rights reserved.